So next up, with brands including Discovery, Oprah Winfrey Network, the Animal Planet, Travel Channel, Golf TV, Food Network, Eurosport, and more than 100 more, Discovery Communications is the global leader in content creation and distribution. Today, we're very lucky to have two of the company's tech leads who will share the company's journey into the cloud. Remember, if you have questions for them, please put them into the chat window so we can get answers for you at the end of this discussion. Rob Goldheim is a 13-year veteran at Discovery, where he serves as Group Vice President of Production Engineering. Wayne Caffry has been with the Discovery team for more than 15 years and currently serves as Senior Vice President of Post-Production. Thank you both for being here. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat window. So, Wayne and Rob, let's get started.
My name is Wayne Caffry. I'm SVP of Post Production for Discovery with teams currently in Maryland, New York, Miami, Knoxville, and London right now. And we cater to all the networks, corporate, and all the different EMEA regions and Asia Pacific, Asia Latin.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Rob Goldheim, Group Vice President of Production Engineering for Discovery. And we basically, production engineering is in charge of studio, live, as well as post-production, the engineering side of the house. And like Wayne, we have teams in different regions around the US and the globe.
That's great. Well, thank you again for being here this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having
me. Well, what we wanted to kind of do is go through our experiences with working remotely, obviously post-production being kind of the focus here, and Rob's team on the engineering side, and how we've managed through the situation with what we're doing, with what's going on right now. What I was going to do is just give everyone a quick overview of just the volume of work that we do, just to kind of give you an idea of where we were kind of pre-COVID, where we are now, and then we'll talk about in general, like after we get through the different topics, where we see our departments and how we see our work being done in the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm just going to share with you a brief slide. So there's just 2 slides here, and just let me know if you guys can see that. Okay.
Got it.
Cool. So just to give a quick overview, Discovery's post-production right now, we have 7 locations. As of March 2020, we had 7 locations. Obviously, you see it there: Maryland, Virginia, Knoxville, Tennessee. We had 2 in Chelsea. One was in the headquarters that we've now vacated, and the other was in Chelsea Market. We have post in Miami, and then Chiswick in London. Where by November, we will be down to 4 locations. That will be Maryland. We will have consolidated Novatech from Virginia into DCTC Maryland, which we've already done. Miami Post is in the midst of relocating to Knoxville, and we consolidated Post at 850 into Chelsea Market. And obviously we can talk about the challenges there and the future challenges we see with that. And we still have the London Post in Chiswick. On here, what's not on here is there's a post team in Amsterdam, which Rob's team is supporting in terms of compliance work, but I'll let him speak to that when we get to our edit 2.0 and future edit stuff. Our clients that we cater to is obviously all of our US nets, all of corporate, and all the different regions, as I said before: UK, EMEA, Latin America, and the APAC regions. All the different services of what you'd imagine post-production would do would be everything from original programs or versions, repacks, reloads, which is taking programs and adding in social media content or additional content that didn't air the first time, compliance editing for the different regions, language and graphics reversions, which happen all over the globe. Marketing promos in short form. So a lot of you name the platform, we do promos and short form for it. And then obviously high-end color correction, effects editing, sound design, audio mixing. And then just the different platforms. Obviously, we deliver for all the platforms for the company, everything from broadcast to social media platforms. And then just to, sorry, here we go. Oh. Just to go through the resources that we currently utilize, and Rob's team supports with us. We have about 171 edit systems, obviously UHD color grading rooms, audio suites. We have a staff of about 119, and then an extra pool of 140 freelancers. Our main resources are scheduled out of Silver Spring, Maryland and London for all locations. Right now, we're averaging about 174 sessions per day, or shifts, if you want to think about it. Each session for us is about 8 hours a day, is 8 hours. So about 174 per day. And we're on track to repeat kind of last year's numbers, which was 330,000 post hours, 49 to 50,000 programs, and 30,000 promos. So that is, I'll just stop sharing there. That is kind of the, that's kind of where we are, where we are, kind of like the scope of things. So as we talk through what we had to manage with COVID and stuff like that, it'd be good if everyone keep in mind that the volumes that we're trying to manage there and how we work through those. So maybe we just start talking about pre-COVID and what our plan was. And Rob, if you want to talk about like what the end, what from your standpoint, what the plan for cloud edit was, or remote editing, before this all hit.
Yep. Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, that's a lot. And, you can see from what Wayne just presented that, that's a lot of sessions. And then there's, pre-COVID, there was the moving target of all of the real estate strategy for Discovery, closing offices, reopening new offices, rebuilds, and these sorts of things all have to be factored in. And it became very apparent to us very early on that we need to come up with a strategy where we could shift a lot of the work around based on where the people were, where the resources were, and the cloud, provided us an opportunity. There's some work done in advance to the production environment that helped us along the way. And we'll talk about that. But our content, getting an understanding of our content and our content supply chains kind of led us to be able to start what Wayne was referring to as Edit 2.0. So in Discovery's world, Edit 2.0 is comprised of 3 pillars, essentially. There is straight up cloud-based editing, which is a sort of a lift and shift of our on-premise edit clients and storage, including all the plugins and fonts and all the goodies that go with it for the creative people. That all gets migrated up to a public cloud, and you edit just as if you were sitting in front of your machine. Another pillar of Edit 2.0, our next generation editing, is what we call proxy edit. And Wayne touched on this a little bit, and we've rolled that out already into the Amsterdam office for compliance editing. And what that is cloud-based proxy editing. In other words, through our content chain, we can deliver to the editors a work order that contains all of their media and information about what compliance edits they should be making and working on. They make their edits against a smaller res, or it's full resolution but smaller bitrate file, and check that edit. And then when they hit complete and they feel they've done their job, and there can be a review and approval if needed, it goes up to the cloud and then gets those edits, and that EDO gets rendered against the high resolution asset. And then it goes into some checks and then gets delivered if it passes. And then the third pillar on the next generation edit is live cloud editing. So in other words, and we're starting to test this in some accounts for our Food Network Kitchen live events, where we do 5 live events a day. We can stream the camera footage to the cloud and do some lightweight editing if there needs to be a fix, or for some highlights and delivery to social media and that sort of thing. And so these are all the things that we had put in place, or we were working toward putting in place all pre-COVID. And it sort of, I don't know that we can use the term fortuitous with COVID, but having some of that in hand and that direction allowed us to sort of not miss a beat when we weren't able to go back into the offices.
Now, one quick question for you regarding that. Did it change the priority once COVID became real? Did it change the priority of these solutions and how they were going to be deployed, or was it pretty much just accelerating the whole process?
It changed the priority and accelerated. It definitely we immediately had phone calls asking when's it going to be available to us at scale, and so we got the priorities, and I mean all three have to be rolled out because they're based on use cases. And so we have all of those use cases active, and people don't want to stop now more than ever for the content. We want to deliver content as quickly as we can with the same quality they're used to. So there's a big ask for it.
Sure.
Would you agree with that, Wayne?
Yeah, definitely. And it leads right into us and our teams anticipating the impact of COVID. So one of the big challenges was kind of like looking at future. Things hadn't really hit yet. If you think about January, February, people were kind of watching the news. So it was hard to get a clear understanding of how much of an impact this thing was going to have. You know, it's just like Rob's team. My team is considered essential. So when things like this happen, when you get like hurricanes or when you get big snowstorms and stuff like that, the majority of my team would still be required to make it into the office. And so we were still in that mindset of how can we plan to still get into the office if this, really hits and has a big impact. So when obviously we started talking with Rob's team immediately, they were already researching remote solutions, or at least a stopgap solution for the rest of the year until we could get a true cloud editing platform in place. So but there was a gap. There was a gap in right as when equipment would be available purely through manufacturing delays, right, from where the equipment was coming from, and there was a gap between that and when we needed to get people out of the office. But I think one of the things that made us really successful was working to our own timeline. We didn't wait for a government mandate. We didn't local government mandates. We didn't wait for anybody, even higher up. We didn't wait for our bosses to say, hey, you should go remote. And all the time they were super, communicating all the time with us and stuff like that. We kind of started planning out ahead of it. And one of the things that we did was we were like, okay, we don't have a solid remote system. We'll have something in a few weeks, but how do we get people out of the office and create social distancing within the office, right? Because we had a lot of desktop editing going on, people very close to each other. So what we immediately did was we just kind of polled the team. A lot of our editors have really great rigs at home, a lot of equipment that they've collected over the years. And so we were able to basically, at least in the US, if we just go with US numbers, about 50 of our editors had their own gear at home, as well as audio guys had their own gear at home. So what we did was we kind of put together manual processes to get them media back and forth. And then my team, the ops team, just working around the clock to support them in terms of the workflows, the manual workflows. And then just getting those 50 people out of the office created the space for us to realign and reschedule everybody within an edit suite. And not a touchdown. And then we also had multiple shifts going at the same time. So we needed to get people off the multiple shifts because people were very concerned about sharing rooms and all that kind of stuff. So I think that really helped, and that gave us the 2-3 week gap that we needed. So as once the equipment came in, then Rob's team worked really. They already had RGS kind of like researched, and we were able to just basically we were like a handout station. We just had editors pull up, sometimes just opening the trunk of their car, putting equipment in it. They drive off home, they go home, they set it up. And then that kind of just led into, just then figuring out the workflows remotely and connecting and all that kind of stuff. Rob, your perspective on just the timelines and getting the equipment, and it was definitely a challenge, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think everyone was in the same boat, whether you're in this industry or not. But the testing of HPRGS and some of the remote systems we had already done because we sort of needed to, as Wayne pointed out in his slides. We have all these locations all over the place, and to have engineering support in all of those locations, that can be a real challenge for us. So we were trying to remote into those machines and make sure that we could test it by remoting back out. Wayne had some diverse locations for his producers from his editors, so we had built a what we called a remote producer system, where using some cheap off-the-shelf supplies and honestly Zoom, we were able to allow the producer to look in on the edit session, including the editor and his timeline screen or her timeline screen, and have a live look in. Sometimes, and we could switch it to be the play out, so they could do immediate review and approval if needed. We already had that in our back pocket, just out of necessity, and editors being in one location, producers being in another, or even sometimes at home. So we were lucky to have that hardware already in place. And then, as Wayne said, the HPRGS system we had tested for similar reasons and for just engineering necessity. We had to go back in and shore some of that up. And then the hardware we actually were pretty lucky in getting the edit hardware in place to us, because we had already started to investigate an order for scale for our proxy editing solution. And so we had just moved that order up, and which helped us get higher on the priority list for delivery, which helped. But luckily, Wayne and his group were able to do a stopgap while we got that in, and we got it in quickly. But then we had to push images to,
machines.
100 machines.
No trivial task.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So on that regard, just a quick question: was connectivity an issue? Because we weren't really planning to be working from home. I mean, obviously you had some of the other solutions worked out, but how did the connectivity present challenges in this?
You want me to take it, Wayne?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
It did. It had a number of challenges. We did some work. We worked closely with our InfoSec and our IT team, and our VPN. We kind of worked with them to shape some of the edit traffic and kind of isolate the edit traffic versus internet traffic to give sort of a better user experience for the editors. And we also asked the editors to do some things like plug directly into their router and not use Wi-Fi, and if they could shore up their Wi-Fi connectivity and that sort of thing. We had a couple baseline rules, like don't edit from Starbucks if you can. No offense, Starbucks, but in these kind of public spots that just are not too, that they vary too much in their bandwidth.
Sure. Yeah. And then all the time. So we're now basically by April, mid-April, we were 95% remote in all locations, which was a pretty no small task. So the next thing we were really focused on was productivity levels, like were they going to decrease, were they not? It was kind of unknown at the time, like with productions kind of closing up, with the pipeline shut down. But then again, I know Rob's team was working on getting camera kits out to talent and stuff like that. And in the meantime, our services were in more demand than they ever had been before, because of the pandemic, people were at home watching Discovery, watching all our channels. So it became super important to make sure that all the content that we were making and supplying continued to make its way through that supply chain. But what really happened was, looking at the working from home situation, it's tough, and it's still tough. It's still hard to manage, at least from an operations standpoint. You lose a lot by not being in the office. You lose there's not only a technical connectivity, but there's an emotional connectivity that's lost to the work. And editors and audio mixers, they a lot of them collaborate with producers, and so you kind of lose that. So we've done the best thing we can to try and maintain some sort of office environment, which is we hold regular office hours for people to drop by, because that's what we would do. That's what we would do if we were in the office. I would walk around whatever facility I was in at the time and just go visit people, stop in, talk to people, hallway conversations, and you lose all that. And so we're still trying to really get back to that. We won't 100% get back to it, but and then just to kind of talk about it's really difficult to actually edit an audio mix from home. So everybody's situation is different. Some people love it, some people, and they don't want to come back to the office, but some people it's really, really difficult. People with kids at home trying to, can you imagine trying to, homeschool and then edit for 8 hours or mix for 8 hours? We've got, people going through some serious stuff at home, and all the time, the interaction and the support they might get from being in the office, that's gone. So it's been super challenging working towards that. So, and then just from a standpoint going into the office, we've only been really going back in for heavy lifting stuff like color correction stuff, heavy graphics work, or for instance, like just with Shark Week, we had an editor, anything that's like very timely and needs a quick turnaround, we have to have somebody in the office just to make sure there's no delays with work from home systems and stuff like that. Rob, anything to add on here?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's
right?
a great point. I mean, we all miss seeing each other and joking around with the engineers and the editors for sure, and the audio people, of course. There are some technical limits also with the kind of remoting in to your client in our facilities. Baseband outputs from the laptops we provided, to scopes and to broadcast monitors are non-existent or different from what they're used to in suite. And to Wayne's point, that's what, kind of affects some of the productivity and creates a little bit more fatigue for the editors. And we're very conscious of it. We'd love to get, 10 gig to each client, to each editor's house. And we wouldn't have to worry about that anymore, but I don't know that that's in the cards. So we're working through some of those issues and trying to ease some of that. And like Wayne said, keeping the facility up and running so that if there's a need to come into the facility, and we have all the COVID rules in place for distancing and walking around and reporting, we can accommodate that as well.
That's great. I mean, it's a lot to think about, right? It was a lot to think about before COVID.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, what you've been able to pull together. And again, because you were planning something similar prior to this, it probably made things a bit easier. But with these challenges, it seems like, I'm curious how much of the percentage of the workforce wants to stay working at home after it's okay to come to the office. Has that conversation been had yet?
For sure, yes, we are having that as it's going. We were almost about to kind of reopen the London office, and obviously with recent turn of events there, we are no longer doing that. We're still going in on very limited basis for color correction and stuff like that. But we were actually gearing up for the team to go in on a rotational basis, people who wanted to get back into the office, who it would benefit. So obviously we put a halt on that start of next year for people to go in safely and work and collaborate again and get back to that what that norm was. But there will be people who just won't feel comfortable for quite a while going back into the office, and so we need to be sensitive to all that and kind of work through those situations. So it's here. Remote working in some fashion is here to stay, but it's up to us and as managers to kind of figure out what's that right balance, keeping people safe until people feel comfortable to get a vaccine, even, right? Because even if there is a vaccine, people may not feel comfortable taking it. So it's all these things just being prepped for it. But the great thing is we've had a really good working solution right now. Rob can kind of go through where we're looking at next. Some pretty exciting stuff. Our overall productivity, surprisingly, across the board, is only down 0.3% since before we went remote. Now, what we've noticed is that working remote, some things are actually more efficient, like doing cut the clock work, doing some of the international compliance work, doing things where it's just an editor working on their on their system. That stuff tends to be quicker to do from a remote standpoint. It's when you get into a collaborative environment, especially on the programming side, when just going through Shark Week, we saw this really kind of like highlighted the difficulties, is that collaboration within on the programming side took a hit. But overall, the compliance and cut the clock work leveled it out. So obviously going back into an office environment, we're going to be looking for that balance to maintain the efficiencies we found with the cut the clock compliance work and gain back the efficiencies on the programming side, but we have to do it in a safe way. Rob, I don't know if you want to kind of lead into the different solutions we're now looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to add to that just from the engineering side and the remote support of these systems. We had, before COVID hit, because of our diverse locations of all the clients and the editors, we had already gone to our engineers work from home 2 to 3 days a week, and then go into the office in different locations the other two or 3 days, depending. So that means we had to have remote access. We had to make sure that each client was built the same exact way, so we knew what to expect if there was a problem. We had images for all of them and could first birthday them if need be, to get the editors back up and running as quickly as possible. So we were in pretty good shape. We had already worked out all the access questions, so we were in pretty good shape to do that 5 days a week. It's just, as Wayne said, kind of the camaraderie and the social aspect of it.
Well, it's very impressive. I mean, the volume of content that you generate on a normal day is remarkable. What you've been doing during COVID is astounding. It really is. Do you guys have any final thoughts as we wrap up here, or do you want to take a question?
Happy to take a question.
One of the questions just came up is, how are you planning for physical space, given the footprint needed is dependent on where you settle for remote work versus premise work?
That's a good question. Yeah. I'll take a stab at it. And the truth is, it's hard to answer right now. We've been asking that same question of our management and real estate people. But at the end of the day, I think we will maintain the footprint that we have, because we'll have, as Wayne talked about earlier, we'll have some people going in and we'll have some people remote, but the people going in will want to provide more space for them, a little bit more. So it'll probably be the same footprint with just less humans occupying it, is how I see it. Wayne?
Yeah, for sure. It's like we were kind of just saying too, it's finding that right balance. Obviously, real estate is going to be not only a big thing for our company, but for every company. Luckily, we were already in the midst of a lot of moves when this happened, and thank God we were able to continue those moves. Some of the moves were actually, it got obviously some people on the facility side still had to go into the office to make those moves happen, and people on Rob's team had to make those moves happen. But the footprint, like I said, we were 95% remote, so. It's just about now, if we're going to get people back in, we still have edit rooms, which are going to become more important than ever, I think, right? And then because you can truly isolate somebody really well there. But it's just about maintaining the right foot traffic until we can really assess how long we need to keep the majority of the team remote. But I think in a year from now, I'm a believer that people will return to normal. I think people... I think there's a reason in the first place that we've had offices everywhere, right? The way businesses have offices. Sure. And I think there's true collaboration that teams can have by being in the office. But I do think that it's probably going to change the way we work for probably forever. But it's just about finding that right balance between what's the right work to be done remotely and what's the right work to be done in the office in a collaborative environment.
Sure. Well, we've got time for one last comment here. I'm just curious, we've talked about reducing the human footprint in the offices, but once you get back to a situation where people are going back to the office, what does your cloud strategy look like then? Are you going to maintain the hardware on-prem, or is most of that going to be moved to the cloud?
My expectation is it'll be hybrid for a while, but we'll start migrating to those three pillars, one or another, by use case as best we can. I wouldn't expect to see a big refresh of on-premise hardware as we move forward. There will be some, but as these pools of storage that we have all across the globe, edit storage, high-end edit storage, they're hard to maintain remotely, and it's expensive. And if we can start looking at SaaS models and use what or pay for what you use, and not your highest common denominator, we're hoping that there's a lot of cost savings in that, and also a lot more ease of support and efficiencies, right? If we can stop delivering one piece of media to 20 places, there's a lot of cost savings in that we have to figure out a way to calculate that. But I think the writing's on the wall that that's the place to go.
Sure. Well, I can't thank you both enough for your time today, and we're big fans of the Discovery family. Thanks for being supporters of the AIS as well. Thank you for your time. It's been enlightening, and I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Buzz.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah,
Take
it's
care.
pleasure.